Hey, y'all. You're now tuned in to the original podcast of A Stronger Foundation. Welcome. Some call me Doctor, others call me Master T. You can call me anytime. I'm Sweet T, the academic architect PDO. That's planner, designer, and overseer of the academic success plan for kids. So tell your neighbor or call somebody and let them know it's that time. Hey, y'all, let's get building. Hey guys, I am so glad you can come by today. You see, I really need to talk because, well, I'm a bit troubled by the replacement of regular letter grades in elementary schools with the new PR marking. I'm concerned that when students earn a PR on a scale that may be set below the grade level standard, it provides a misleading report of accomplishment, which results in what I call a long term crippling effect. It misleads a parent into thinking that it's okay for their child to walk, figuratively speaking, when in actuality, that child should be sprinting in order to be considered proficient according to the criteria of the standard bar. Okay, you see, flow with me for a minute. When people are traveling and become cognizant that the road ahead is long and they have many miles to go, they're more inclined to maintain a more diligent momentum than they would if they knew they only had a short way to go before reaching their destination. But what if, like in the cartoons, they see a mirage that makes them feel like their destination is within arm's length? Like they could just reach out and they'd be there. See, at that point, they may feel like it's okay to relax, lay back, and even drop the pace down to like a crawl. I'm afraid that this is similar to the effect that PR has on our students. Just think about the many Olympians who lost out on the gold medal simply because they embraced a mirage of their victory and backed off a little too soon. Come on, you've heard the stories about like another athlete capturing the gold medal by the skin of their nose simply because they maintained momentum all the way through the finish line. Pertaining back to our students, why do we feel guilty for allowing kids to engage in rigorous learning? Why do we feel compelled to spare them from hard work now, even though we know from experience that it will pay off and be beneficial to the child in the long run? Well, whether whatever the answer is to those questions may also suffice as the explanation to the reason why so many students are unable to meet the minimum grade level requirements to demonstrate proficiency of the standards. Let's back up and start back at the beginning. When children first begin school back in pre-K. See, at that point, when they first begin school, they are essentially all equal in terms of their ability to learn. In terms of academic standings, they all begin at the same starting line. Sure, some kids may know more than others depending on what they already learned from previous exposure to educational programs or any other form of early learning. However, all in all, they all begin fresh the first day in that classroom and receive the same instruction from day one. Even with considering the many variables involved in the degree to which each child will acquire the knowledge presented by the teacher, I'm talking about in terms of one child's ability to grasp the information faster based on prior knowledge as opposed to the child who is learning the information for the first time. Essentially, both children has the same opportunity to master the standards that are being taught to them. For the child with prior knowledge, based upon some form of pre-exposure to the skill, acquisition of the new knowledge may require less effort. For the child who had no prior exposure, who is learning the skill for the very first time, more effort and time may be required in order to gain proficiency. But again, it's completely doable. At this stage in their academic journey, there is no problems, and any potential problem can be easily avoided if the student simply devotes an extra hour or completes an extra session in order to master the skills and keep gaps out. That's it. That's all it takes. And if this process is practiced for each skill that challenges a student, essentially, no gaps will be formed in the child's learning. This keeps a child in the game on the same playing field. Unfortunately, that is the fairy tale version of a very real dilemma. You see, beginning as early as pre-K and kindergarten, when parents are encouraged by teachers to pay attention to certain areas of academic weaknesses that will potentially develop into an academic epidemic or even worse, an academic pandemic, many parents simply brush off the warning and neglect to take any action at all. This is the first action that causes learning gaps to generate. Although it is understandable that a parent may hesitate initially to become overly alarmed by an academic warning regarding their child, especially if the child is only in kindergarten or first grade, but it quickly escalates from being understandable to being a downright shame when this neglect becomes a pattern. Just imagine what happens to a child's confidence at that early stage when they can already tell that they are not as smart as they could be, simply by mentally comparing themselves to their peers. And trust me, they do. This is the point when kids develop low efficacy or poor aptitude towards learning. Oh, you thought they were just born that way. Oh no. Learning gaps are the culprit which prevents them from being able to comprehend new levels of a previously taught skill. Having learning gaps is likened to the scenario of pouring water in a bucket that has multiple holes. Even one hole would significantly affect the ability of the bucket to hold the water even with constant input. Remember that kids do not take well to failure. They prefer to shy away in order to avoid shame. Once they realize that they are missing enough of the academic links required for making connections, they shut down and they stop trying, believing that their efforts will not produce success. This is when academic compensations become necessary. For the students with oblivious or neglectful parents, an alternative education plan must be developed. Not because of a lack of ability on the child's part, but because of a lack of, I'm not even going to say it. So it's pretty rare for any student to be retained in kindergarten. And so the students all move on to first grade. This promotion gives the neglectful parent a sense of false comfort. But the same pattern repeats in first grade, and the student develops more gaps in learning. And because the skills build upon each other, the child ultimately begins to sink into an academic quicksand pit. If the child somehow manages to escape retention in first grade, they once again get promoted to grade 2 by the power of the peer, of course. And regarding grade 2, something about second grade has always puzzled me. Why does it seem that second grade is like being laid off from work? Or like it is believed that the student has earned a year-long vacation from rigorous learning? Never mind. Just thinking out loud. Anyways, by now, in their academic journey, the students have been allowed to develop learning gaps and poor aptitude for learning. In addition, by now, due to a lack of academic accountability and rigor, many also develop learned helplessness and low academic integrity, refusing to apply themselves unless a teacher is in direct proximity. By now, they have subconsciously separated themselves academically into stratified classes of ability within the classroom. I remember back when classrooms would label learning groups by colors. Every student knew what it meant to be in the red or yellow groups. But the PR scale changed that so that now the red and yellow groups feel like they are green or even higher, purple. If that's not a crippling effect, I don't know what is. Let me share an experience that will explain what I mean by academic stratified classes within the classroom. Many times as a classroom teacher, I would pose a question to my students, and based on the level of taxonomy, one group of kids in the room would literally turn and look to the other group of kids whom they believed to have had the ability to respond to a question of that caliber. They wouldn't even try. One of the most memorable of my experiences is when I consciously redirected the same question to a student who had passed it on to the more capable student. Never will I forget how the child looked me deep into the eyes and said with a sense of complacency, he said, Miss, I got nothing. Okay, sweetie, how does PR come into play here? Well, PR allows the student and parent to be protected from the stress related to the shame they would otherwise feel from receiving actual letter grades. PR becomes a crippling effect, which makes the child comfortable, and so comfortable to the point that they back off the momentum and relax even more. PR protects a child's feelings by hiding their low grades because somehow, some way, someone believes that it is better to not allow a child to see their repeated low grades now while they are young and have a chance to fix them than it is to allow them to face the music upon entering secondary school at a time when it may be too late due to other contributing factors such as social dilemmas. Come on, sweetie. It's never too late. We all know that. True. You're correct, generally speaking. Yet, I want to talk to you after you've allowed a child to develop years of poor work ethics during the stage when they were most vulnerable and moldable. Then go ahead and try to change them into one that is intrinsically driven. Oh, again, you thought they are just born with it. Efficacy, motivation, determination, and drive must all be taught. In terms of academic drive and ability, some may be born with it. But if your child isn't born with it, then buy it. Invest in an academic plan for your child. Not the type where you hire a quick fixer that fixes one missing link in order to get a child to pass one test. No, that's like dangling a carrot before the child and saying, ooh, see how good your scores could actually be if you receive the level of help that you really need? I'm talking about investment in a long term academic plan for the child outside of the regular school. Teachers are miracle workers, but they are outnumbered in a classroom, often 20 to 1, oftentimes. Mhm. Peer creates a crippling effect because once a student receives a PR, they begin to move even slower, not realizing that the mirage of a real possible victory in their view may actually be on a completely different scale of a lower level. So let's visit the crippling effect based on my viewpoint. A crippling effect is one that makes a person weak. In a classroom, many students struggle with reading fluency, which is the rate at which a child is able to recognize and call out words as they read. In order to accommodate this area of weakness, schools now incorporate digital reading devices so that the child does not have to manually read the material. Now, since a child knows that this crutch is available, they find it useless to improve their reading fluency, hence widening their learning gaps. This creates an academically unhealthy dependency for the student and creates a crippling effect as it weakens the child's momentum. How? Well, reading fluency of itself is a prerequisite for future standards. Therefore, dependency on a digital resource has essentially limited the child's chances of mastering those future standards. Fluency is required for kids to build stamina, rigor, memory, and some related optical disciplines involved in making smooth mental connections. Now, don't get me wrong, there are many benefits to digital reading resources when used as intended. One benefit is that they help enhance listening skills. The issue, however, is in many cases, as a student utilizes the digital reading resource, they are often completely unfocused and disengaged to the degree where they find it unnecessary to even look at the computer screen as the words are being read for them. Now, looking at the screen as the words are read would certainly help to strengthen their reading accuracy, which is word recognition. This would directly increase their fluency. However, with the digital device misused as a crutch, the student becomes weaker, hence the crippling effect. Sweet tea, I am not fully clear on the role of the PR power in all of this. Well, with the help of the digital device, the child is then able to meet the requirements and receives a PR. And that is fine, except which PR is that? Because remember, the child would not receive the PR without the device. So is the regular PR, is it a regular PR that they're receiving? The same PR given to the other students who are able to perform the task as intended according to the curriculum standard? Without the aid form of this device, is what I'm saying. Let me say that again. Without the aid from the device, is that the same PR that they are receiving? Or is it an alternative PR for those unable to achieve based on the criteria of the standard bar? The standard bar, not an alternative bar. Okay, so let's sit back and take a deep breath because as heavy as this information may be, I am about to go to an even deeper level, which may be or seem a bit controversial. So what if I told you that I sometimes wonder if PR is a way of segregating learners? You know, the cream from the crop, the lower class from the upper and middle. What if this is the way of keeping society in check? The remedy for keeping those at the top, and leaving the rest to endure entropy. Well, if you want to hear the discussion on academic segregation, just check out that podcast title. For now, let's wrap up the crippling effects of peer power. Peer has the power to mislead and ultimately create a crippling effect. So the next time your child gets a PR, inquire about its nature. Ask whether your child's PR is based on the standard grade level scale. If it is based on the standardized scale, inquire to what numerical value it aligns, percentage wise. Is it a 70% or 90% and above? In closing, let me share something with you. In the process of seeking to understand the physical structure of our world, geologists engage in many investigations. And since a great deal of their answers are often found trapped inside rocks, they have a great tendency to constantly seek and explore in places the average person would never go. Sometimes rocks are close to the surface and, and are easily retrieved from minor digging. Other times, a geologist must dig much deeper in order to access other unique and diverse stones that encapsulate many hidden answers to life's greatest mysteries. Our children are like these precious stones. And like these stones, they too have a priceless treasure trapped inside of them. That treasure is their very purpose for ever being born. Here's my conviction. Some kids, especially those that have an academic advantage, as a result of their prior knowledge and positive attitude for learning, are easily reached and their treasures are released. They go on to be successful members of society and enjoy the best things in life. But other kids, some of them require deeper digging in order to be reached. They are gems and precious stones deeply buried with possible key answers to life mysteries trapped inside of them. Answers that may never be revealed without a dedicated miner who is willing to commit to reaching them at their deep, unexplored quarters and pulling them out into the light so that they can sparkle in the greatness that is destined for them. And now, stepping back into reality. See, although as students are pulled towards their destiny, they may be kicking and screaming. The work is too hard. I hate school. You see, I have no doubt that what they're really saying is, please save me from myself. I hear their voices. And if you keep listening carefully, I'm confident that maybe one day you too will hear their cry. Thanks for listening.